Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Julie, and in this video we're going to continue our book, The Way of the Warrior, and we are in chapter 5, which the author Erwin calls them codes. So we're in code 5 right now, and we're going to finish code 5 today. We're going to read about no fault policy, and we're going to read about response ability. And I just want to say, I see a few views on these videos, which means some people out there are enjoying the book. I know I am. I'm being inspired by this book. Every time I do a read, I am able to retain some of the stuff I read, which is kind of interesting because in the last few years, retaining information for me has been a little difficult. I don't know, my cognitive has been a little bit on the slow side, but this book is, helping me understand more about how to approach life. And as far as, like he says on this title of his book, An Ancient Path to Inner Peace, I love how he incorporates the Bible in this book, and he incorporates the character of Jesus. And I just love it. And I just encourage you to give some feedback in the comment section, because I haven't seen any feedback, and I'm just curious to see how you're all feeling about this book and if you like it or not. Because if you do like it, I plan on bringing our next book read by the same author. He has other books out there, and I'm going to go and I'm going to find a different book that he's written and make that our next read if you all enjoyed this one. I just need to know if you're enjoying this one, because nobody's commented yet on how you feel about it. So with our last read, I highlighted a few things. We read about responsibility. We read about, the freedom of responsibility, and we read about the weight of responsibility. I highlighted, when you blame someone else, you become dependent on that individual to solve your problem and change your circumstance. After all, if it's that person's fault, then he or she is the only one who has the power to change your condition. So yeah, that's what happens when we blame someone else. We become dependent on them to change our world. And that's just not the way it should be. We should never be blaming anyone else for our responsibility. And then I highlighted one more thing. I could have highlighted more, but I try to keep it short. Oh, my highlighter went out. I can see it faintly over here. When you blame others for your failure, you become powerless to change the world around you. So those were just a couple things that jumped out at me, along with other things, but like I said, I want to keep it short. So today we're going to read the rest of Code 5. So here we go. No fault policy. Sometimes we feel paralyzed by a past we didn't choose. We find ourselves broken and even traumatized by things that happened to us and not because of us. I have known way too many people who are carrying the weight of their pasts while trying to walk into new futures. From actions of neglect and abuse, violence and addiction, abandonment and mistreatment, there are many legitimate reasons people struggle to recreate themselves. We bear so many wounds that seem to be make healing elusive. When I started reading this, before I started this video, I kind of wanted to see what we were going to read today. I was just thinking, this is so fitting to how I'm feeling right now. And I don't know if anyone else out there can relate, but when we're living in the past, because say we've had traumas and we've had hardships and challenges that were just really hard to overcome, and we're still trying to overcome, we're living in the past. And reading this is helping me understand that things happen, bad things happen all the time, but we can't stay there. We can't stay in the past. So when I started reading this, I thought, wow, this is really fitting to what's going on right now. He says, there are many legitimate reasons people struggle to recreate themselves. We bear so many wounds that seem to make healing elusive. I would never discount the devastating effects of wounds not bought but given. You had no choice about where you were born or to what family you were born into. I completely understand why so many people carry not only wounds but bitterness like a noose around the neck. It is not easy to convince someone to forgive when there is no contrition from the offender. It may be one of the most difficult things in the world to let go of bitterness when it has been the only dam holding back the tears. Taking responsibility when something is your fault makes perfect sense, but it's a tough pill to swallow that you need to take ownership over your circumstances even when they're not your fault. Here's the hard reality. Even if it's not your fault, it's still your responsibility. Though the wounding wasn't your fault, the healing is your responsibility. Though the past may not be your fault, your future is your responsibility. And though their choices are not your fault, were not your fault, your choices are your responsibility. Don't let those who are at fault keep their hold on your life by relinquishing your power to change and to be free of them. Bitterness is how your soul lets you know that they still have power over you. Hatred traps the poison inside of you. Only love and forgiveness allow you the power to move forward. Only love and forgiveness allow you the power to move forward. Anger is not your strength. Intention is. Every person you have not forgiven, everything in your past that holds you, has stolen a part of who you are. One of the greatest battles of the warrior is to reclaim the territories of the soul. We are reminded by Paul in the Bible, we are reminded by Paul that we have been bought with a price, and within us there is great treasure. The servant who buried the talent thought it was enough to say to the master, "I hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you." He had convinced himself that all he was responsible for was what had been handed to him. The truth is that we are responsible for far more than what we have been given. We are responsible for what could have been done with all that we have been entrusted with. There is a relationship between personal responsibility and risk. One of the curious things about people is that we have an unexpected and extreme variation when it comes to the way we perceive ourselves in relationship to personal responsibility. When they're facing failure, some instinctively assess and attribute blame to outside forces. It was the economy. It was management. It was something else. It was someone else. Then there are others who relate to risk from a polar opposite. When they are assessing failure, their perspective is completely internal. I failed to make the right choices. I didn't work hard enough. I lacked the talent to pull this off. These assessments are less rooted in reality than psychology. It's less about what is real than how we perceive reality. The person who is more likely to blame outside factors usually has a higher sense of self-worth and confidence. Of course, the problem wasn't me. I'm awesome. When a person takes a high degree of responsibility for failure, they tend to have a less elevated sense of self and consider their success more the result of hard work than of talent. So on this spectrum, there is an unexpected relationship between ownership and risk. When a person has high self-confidence yet takes minimal personal ownership for failure, that person will most likely become a low risk taker. You would intuitively think that the person who perceives himself as more talented and less responsible for failure would be the higher risk taker. But what's been found time after time and time again, is that high view of self, coupled with low personal responsibility for failure, can diminish a person's ability to take necessary risks and embrace challenges that do not guarantee success. A more grounded sense of self with a high personal responsibility for failure postures a person to have higher resiliency and greater courage when facing necessary challenges. You would in turn also conclude that the person who sees himself as less talented, who sees success as the outcome of his hard work and takes high personal responsibility for failure, would be low risk. But the opposite is true. When you take personal responsibility for failure, you actually gain power rather than lose it. If it was your fault, if it's your failure, you have the power to change the result. If it wasn't your fault, if you have no relationship to failure, you are powerless to change both the outcome and the possibility for success. You can hear this language all the time when you listen to certain professional athletes during interviews. Assuming they're on the losing team, they will blame the lineup of the players on the team. However, if they win, they're likely to claim it is further evidence of their greatness. They are always responsible for their victory and never responsible for their defeat. They take ownership for success, but never for failure. The same dynamic can be observed when an athlete is involved in an individual sport. If they lose, they may claim it's because of an injury or weather conditions or another external variable. And if they win, they of course claim it's further evidence of their personal greatness. Many times this is why a world-class athlete in an individual sport does not live up to expectations. When they don't. Many times this is why if a world-class athlete in an individual sport does not line up and live up to their expectations, they will immediately fire their coach. They figure someone is to blame, and the one certain thing is that it is not their own fault. I recently met with a business owner who shared with me how they were struggling through the loss of employees that were leaving the company. Their industry is one that lends itself towards personal friendships and relationships among people who work together. The owner felt a profound sense of betrayal, not just because the employees chose to leave them, but because each time they left, they would blame the owners for creating a negative environment. I reminded the owner of how over the years, when those same employees worked for other companies, each time they left, they created negative scenarios to justify their leaving. When you have a high self-image with a low relationship to personal responsibility, you have to create a scenario in which someone or something else is to blame. The important thing to remember is not that you need to have a lower view of yourself, although that may be true too, but that your power comes in taking personal responsibility for your life. The way of the warrior is a path towards ownership. The warrior takes responsibility for their life, their actions, and the world around them. The warrior knows that they own nothing, so they can risk everything. The warrior knows that the measure of their success is not in the outcome, but in the intention. The courage to face the challenge is the victory. The warrior is not afraid to be exposed by defeat. Defeat does not diminish the heart of the warrior, for they do not fight for their own fame, but for freedom of others. If your view of yourself is greater than what reality can bear, you will choose to protect yourself from great risks because you cannot bear the blunt force trauma of failure. If you know that failure is a temporary condition and believe hard work will see you through, you're more likely to take bigger risks. If your practice in life is taking great risks, you are all too familiar with the impact of failure. Ironically, if failure is not an option, neither is taking risks. Failure is an inevitable ingredient of success, and because you know that failure is not terminal. Years ago, we at Mosaic had a massive breakdown at one of our events. The next day, all of the leaders and all of the teams met to assess the breakdown. I remember asking for clarification and asking what I thought was a pretty simple question. Who is responsible for this particular area where the breakdown happened? One by one, everyone in the room told me it was not their responsibility. It was a strange and surreal moment to be sitting in a room full of executives where apparently not one of them was responsible for the principal item on our agenda. I paused for a moment, took a deep breath to think it over, and then gave everyone an assignment. I want you to go find the person responsible for this so I can hire them, because they are the only person who should be in this room. You get that? If you're not responsible for a problem, you don't have the power to fix it. Find the person who takes responsibility, and you have found the person who has the power to bring change. You cannot own the moment if you do not take ownership. The warrior may never own anything, but is responsible for the things that matter most. This is the way of the warrior. And that was the end of Code 5, talking about responsibility. And so I hope this chapter really spoke to you. It really spoke to me. I would pause and reflect and think about the times that I maybe did blame others when I really shouldn't have been blaming others, and I should have been just taking responsibility myself. I think we all are guilty of that. And so this chapter really spoke to me, and it gave me insight into my own behavior from the past, my behavior right now, and how my behavior should be in the future. And I don't know about you, but I want to be a warrior. I want to be like a warrior. I want to just serve others, and I want to put myself last. And I know there's so many different, every day is different. Every day that we are gifted here on earth brings a different situation. Every day is different. And we always find ourselves in different situations, different circumstances. But we must remember that with each and every circumstance, no matter what it is, just take a step back and reflect on it before you make any type of decisions. Because all too often, we don't think before we act. And when that happens, we're more likely to blame someone else. You know, we're more likely to look externally for a reason as to why something happened, instead of just taking a step back and taking it all in and thinking, okay, was this me? What's going on here? And just like at the end of this chapter, when he asked his team, like, who was responsible for this area of the breakdown? And they were all like, wasn't me. And he's like, okay, well, I'll give you an assignment. Go out and find the person who is responsible for it, and I'm going to hire them, because they're the ones that can fix what happened. Because everyone in the room was like, wasn't me, not my job, wasn't my responsibility. So none of them were there to create any type of solution or take ownership for what happened. See what I'm saying? It's like, we got to take a step back every day and think about what's going on in our lives, and just kind of do an inventory check about where our behaviors are. And that's why I'm liking this book, because it's making me do that. And I'm applying this to my marriage. I'm applying this as a mother. I'm applying this just as a person in general, as a friend. Sorry, my contact, it keeps getting dry on me. And I'm applying it to my life. And I find myself at certain points in the day, you know, just in a situation that I might be in, or a conversation that I'm having, I think back about this book that we're reading. I think back about some of the things that we've read. And that's how I know I'm kind of applying this book to my life. And so I'm enjoying it. I'm learning. And I hope you are too. The Way of the Warrior. So in our next video for this book read, we're going to start Code 6, Chapter 6. And what is it about? We're going to read about the warrior harnesses their strength. So this will be interesting. And like I said, we're about halfway through the book. And let me know how you're feeling about it so far. I haven't had any feedback. So, okay. With that being said, I'm going to go and turn on the AC now, because it's getting rather warm in here. And until next time, stay strong, stay prayed up, stay grateful, and have a wonderful day. Bye.